Alright, so why don't you start by saying your name and the culture that you have at home and just a little bit about yourself.
I'm Andy Garcia. I am from a Hispanic and Latin American culture. I'm in 11th grade.
Awesome. So, you've been going here for quite a while, and so what do you think the Lovett culture is, and is it different than what you have at home, and if it's different, how so?
Well, the things that the Lovett community highlight kind of revolve around the American white culture, like in particular, like sports. You don't see everybody talking about soccer, which is a little strange for me, since in Latin America that's all they talk about, and it's more football. But that's the American culture, not Lovett in specific.
And so do you speak Spanish, at home on a full time?
I do Spanish, Portuguese. And,
so when you first came to Lovett, how was that adjustment between totally speaking Spanish at home and then coming to Lovett and having to kind of switch to a different culture?
I spoke English in my elementary school. I went to Trinity, so from there that was different. But for here, I didn't really see a change between my old elementary school and Lovett. So.
And how was it when you came into Trinity?
I guess since English isn't my first language, it was hard for that. But a long time ago, so it's going to be pretty hard to remember. But I do remember that it wasn't as easy to understand, things that they do after school and like the activities that they participate in. The language barrier was never a problem for me, but activities and such were.
So here at Lovett, what are some pressures that you face, socially, academically, perceptionally, that you face here at school, being Hispanic?
Well, I think that Lovett has helped reduce some of those expectations, but they all kind of want you to join the culture that they have set up for you. Go to chapel where they usually talk about the Jesus and the Christian faith rather than all other types of religion, which I don't really disagree with, because that's what they're founded off of. But in the world we live in today, you have to be more open to that. So if they wanted to allow for more religious studies, instead of having to go to chapel, if you were a Muslim, you could go pray on your own and things like that. I think it'd be easier for students to feel accepted and not have to just acknowledge and be part of the Lovett culture that they want you to.
What do you think, here at Lovett, the perception is of Hispanics, and how do you think that differs from what you think Hispanics really are, or should be?
Well, I can't tell you what I think other people think, because that's just wrong. But being one of the only Hispanics at Lovett, it's at first in middle school nobody really talks about the difference between races and cultures. So I don't think it was a big problem then, because I was able to adjust. But I think it'd be harder for a Hispanic to join in high school, and people already have their set opinions on certain things. So having to come into middle school, it's easier because kids are just unaware of the difficulties that could transpire from being of a different culture.
So how do you balance your Hispanic culture at home and then your quote-unquote Lovett culture here? Is it difficult? Is it easy for you?
I find it pretty easy because my parents raised me with lots of different aspects of different cultures, since my parents one is from Mexico and one is from Argentina, but she is very Brazilian-like because she lived there most of her life. So there's different aspects of culture that I have brought together to create my lifestyle. And so when Lovett brings all these different aspects of their culture, I didn't find it too difficult. But I could see how people that are coming in from just say one culture and one religion, it could be much more difficult for them to really understand and use the Lovett culture as something to work with their lives.
Do you think Lovett's a good place in terms of its approach in helping those types of people and helping that transition from home life to school life?
I've seen it become that. I mean, with affinity groups, you have groups that come together to talk about these problems. You have the Black affinity group. I don't think we have a Hispanic affinity group because there's so few of us, but they have different religious groups, and they do help, but I don't know because I haven't had to deal with that problem as much as other people probably would have.
And I guess, last set of questions. As a Hispanic, what do you think, or what do you not think, you would like to see curriculum-based in, the Spanish classes that we have here? Would you change anything? Is there something that you think that curriculum doesn't teach properly, or, does teach properly?
I mean, I don't take Spanish, but I have friends that do, and what I feel that there's a lack of is just culture-wise. The Spanish program kind of chooses the Spain version of the language, so they use different words, and the culture, I assume they also use the Spanish culture more than the Latin American, especially Mexican culture, just because I think that they should, because we're so close, and it only makes sense since there are way more Mexicans living in the United States than there are Spanish. So I think it'd be better for them to take the more Mexican Spanish approach than the Spain Spanish, and teach that culture, because they're very different. Just like the English and the American cultures, there are lots of significant differences. And
last question, have you ever faced a conflict between both of those cultures, whether it's, for a school-related thing, for a social-related thing, and if so, do you have a story that you could tell?
So like a difference between, the
just when they would, if they do ever come into conflict, and into play. It could be in your way of thinking, in your way of, going about and doing something.
I mean, I don't know, I can't speak for everyone, but sometimes it feels that certain decisions are made based off of who you are, so I don't know how much of it is true, but it kind of feels that colored people are kind of distributed between classes. So I have very few classes with other minorities. I mean, and it doesn't affect me in any way whatsoever, but I feel that you see that separation of cultures. So I can't really be in a class, or I haven't been in a class with other Hispanics or of Latin American descent. So it kind of isolates me to a very small degree. It doesn't affect me in any way, but it does look like it sometimes, just by the ratio of colored to white.
Perfect. Thank you.
Cool.